Hi, welcome to this edition of iChime. In this edition, we have our special Git expert, Patrick Behr, who's going to show step by step what Git is and how to use it as the top version control management system there is in the entire IT industry. It truly has become used by anybody in IT, and you're going to see why by watching this. I hope you enjoy this episode, and one final thanks to Patrick for sharing his time and expertise. Really worthwhile. Take care, everybody, and enjoy. Let me settle on this picture with the tar on the eyes.
Little eye black.
The eye black. So this is the current photo. I was hoping you might have even worn the eye black in today's meeting.
I was thinking about it. Okay. I was.
But you didn't, and that's okay too. But let me tell you a little bit about Patrick, and then I'm going to turn the meeting over to Patrick because this is such a great topic. So Patrick Behr, with top-notch programming, database, and analysis skills, Patrick, who is an IBM champion, has worked on IBMi and its predecessors for the entirety of his 20-plus year IT career. Initially focusing on RPG and DB2, he has since expanded his skill set to include application and database modernization, as well as web development for IBMi. His technical specialties span RPGLE, SQL, API, Node.js, PHP, HTML, CSS, wow, JavaScript, IWS, VS Code, and more. And wait, there's more. And alphabet soup goes on and on and on. But Patrick, you are really a great asset to the IBMi community. Thank you for all you do. And I say this all the time, I'm also just very glad to be able to call you a friend. So I'm so glad you joined us today, and you're hosting the meeting, and you'll be joining the meeting as a guest and sharing your knowledge on Git. So with that, I'm going to end my share. And Patrick, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay. And so I guess a good place to start, we're talking about Git, and what is Git? Git is version control software. And so what I'd like to do is start with what version control kind of looked like decades ago, right? And so I'm going to work member PDM here, and I have a program here, and this is a super duper, really very, very important program, okay? And every company has one or two of these programs. They've been around forever. You don't like to work on them because if it goes down, it's a catastrophe, right? So what does change management usually look like? Well, this is kind of the change management that we've had, right? Just comments in the top of the programs, right? Your tombstone or, DocBox, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to move everybody's picture out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. First thing to notice is that the program in the documentation here is not actually the same name as the program. Not uncommon, but not usually that big of a problem. Then we have some changes that were made to the program eons ago, right, in the 1990s. And so we'll page down through these changes, right? Here's some important stuff here. In 2015, it was copied. So original program was copied. And then here we have some fixes. And then it was copied again from the copy program. So I'm assuming that new copy was copied from copy program. Right, that's what it seems to be saying. And then some other change down here. We rely heavily on these source dates here in the source physical file members. Notice that most of them are 0, though, so there must be some way to change them, right? We can't be totally sure. This one happens to match up with a comment, right? 250127. That is this guy here, change result 2. Okay, what did we change with result 2? Well, I don't know. I don't know if we changed the name of the variable or we changed the size, but at least the dates match up. Okay, we have this other line over here, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that's ever done this accidentally, but I'm not in edit mode, but if you're in edit mode and we go down to the bottom here, and we accidentally, I accidentally did that. Let me put that 8 back in there, and then we page up and page down. Well, I've changed the source date on this, and if I've been working on this for an hour, I'm not likely to change it. change it back, right? Get rid of all my changes. So it can be problematic relying on this source date. Okay. So we have change management. There's version control, there's local, there's centralized, and there's distributed. What does local version control mean? Well, let's take a look over here. Remember PDM, and instead of iChime, I want to go to iChime 2. This is local change management. Okay, before you make a change to the program, you make a copy of it. Okay, and so now you can see that I have made a bunch of copies. This is my version control, right? But unless you're really good about changing the text. You can maybe figure things out by the date, but local version control isn't the greatest option either. So and then we'll just compare that real quick with the sort of version control and information you can get out of Git. I'm in VS Code, and I have opened up the VS Code DB2i package. Okay. I just downloaded it from Git. This is a Git repository. And if I want to see what's happened in there, I can go to this source control, and this will give me a graph and shows me every single change that has been made over, however long, for everything. So here is a change that was made. This was works of Liam. This particular change was made 4 months ago at that timestamp. He fixed AST cache bug. I don't know what that means, but we can click on this, and it will give us a source compare that shows us exactly what changed. And we can look at that for every single file and every single change that's ever been made. Who made it, the timestamp, the commit. And this one's a good example here, because what we can see is that there are multiple. Let me pull that back open here. This one has 3 files that were one file changed. There was one that had here's one with 2 files. Right. So that's the other thing that you don't get with the local version control, right? Just saving copies. What other files changed at the same time in conjunction with this exact change that was made, right? You get that with Git. So these 2 files are both part of the same change. So if folks, and I'm assuming that everybody here is interested in Git, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir, which is par for the course on iChime, right? But you get so much more information with Git for everything that's changed. Makes it very easy to find out exactly what changed, when, why. You can work backwards in time and figure out when a bug was introduced. It's really awesome. So that's what I have for defining version control. I think everybody kind of understands what it is. And Git, where did it come from? We're going to go into the history. And stop me at any time if there's any questions or any other topics that we need to delve into, Charlie. So in going back in history, in the early 2000s, 2002 to 2005, the Linux project was using a version control system called BitKeeper. And in 2005, their free use of it was revoked. And they got upset about that, and they said, okay, forget that, we'll just create our own. And so in a weekend or two, they created Git, and the rest is history. And pretty much everybody uses Git these days for their version control. And in fact, even governments are using it now. So let's take a look at github.com. So let's see, who uses GitHub? There's a link for who uses GitHub and government. So even governments are using Git to track legislation, right? Argentina, Australia, US, there's cities, Brazil, right? And we can just go on and on and on with all of and it's awesome because you can keep track of every single change to any file at all. It can be legislation, it can be regulations, it can be source code, music, if you want to track your composition in Git, essays, works, novels, whatever it is you want. You can track it in Git and always be able to undo things.
So Patrick,
Yes, sir.
so just to your very point, the point here then is that it will track change control in any document. And just to be clear, so you said music or you said legislation, but even in the form of legislation, you just mean like text documents, I'm assuming.
Yeah, any file, right? The way Git works behind the scenes is it is able to detect changes because anytime you have a stream file, basically. So if we're talking IBMi world, it would be a stream file, something in the IFS. Okay, so not source physical file members. That's an issue that we have with using Git, is that it doesn't natively understand source physical files and members. So it works with stream files in the IFS, but it could be any kind of stream file that you want. And it basically just takes the binary contents of it and runs it through a SHA-1 in encryption, and comes up with an ID for it. And if any bytes change, it'll recognize it. So it doesn't matter if it's not just for source code. You can try, if you're writing a novel, you can keep track of all of your changes in Git if you're writing music or whatever. Yep.
And there's nothing special about RPG in this context that it knows. It doesn't even know what it is. It just
doesn't care. Exactly. So you can track your RPG source. It could be fixed format, free format, SQL, display files, whatever you want. If it's a file in the IFS, you can track it in Git. Yep. And so before we get too terribly far, I do want to bring up this git-scm.com, this website. This is the website for Git. Okay, kind of describes what it is. It's a distributed version control system, and then we'll swing back to that and talk about the centralized and distributed and what does that mean. But here, so I don't have all the Git answers. I don't know that anybody has them all, but all of the answers are available here. You can look in the documentation itself. It has a reference manual with every command and every option for every command. So the documentation is not something you're going to want to read regularly. It's more of a, go there for a targeted lookup of some specific information. The other thing that they have is the Pro Git book. And this is available for free. You can download it as an EPUB or MOBI if you want to read it on your Kindle. This is much easier to read and understand. So if you're, just getting started, take a look at the the Pro Git book, and that would be a great place to get started. Okay, and then once you run into a specific problem, then you can go to the documentation and research the exact problem that you're having. So that's git-scm.com, and of course, if you Google search Git documentation, that should pop right up. Okay, now in order to install it, they have an option here for downloads, where you can download for your operating system. And I'm on Windows, and what I always use is gitforwindows.org. And if you download it from gitforwindows.org, you also get Git Bash. So now on Windows, I have a shell terminal and Bash installed as well, which I find to be handy. I don't know if that comes with this download. I've not used the download from Git itself. I always use the Git for Windows. Okay, so that's how you would download Git onto your local machine. And if you're on the IBMi, you would want to open up ACS. Let me see if I can't open this up. And just you install it with open source. It's part of the open source packages. So either yum install Git, or here you want to go into management and open source package management, and it would be inside of here someplace with either your installed packages or available packages. So just look in there for Git, and you can install it and run it on IBMi as well.
And it's not difficult to do that.
No. As long as your open source environment is up and running and going, it's just a yum install Git. And even if you don't have open source installed on your IBMi yet, that's not terribly difficult. Either a quick Google search for IBMi OSS or open source should get you the information you need. And I think you can actually set it up right through ACS as well.
I want to point out also, Patrick, that you mentioned that book, and that book is a great resource. And I'll tell you, you don't have to read that book cover to cover. That was my initial introduction to Git as well, using that book when I first wanted to learn it. And it was just the first few chapters, and I really that gave me a good command, I said command, but a good understanding of Git. I didn't have to read the entire book, so I want to point that out as well. It's a great resource.
Right. Yeah. You're when you start using Git, you're going to be using a very, very small subset of the commands regularly, and then occasionally you'll need to use some of the other commands. Right? So, well, let's just and then once you have Git installed, you're going to want to run a couple of things, and this is available in the book as well. There is an appendix down at the bottom for setup and config. And so there's a few commands you're going to want to run with this git config. You're going to want to set up your user email and your user name. And then you're going to want to set up your core editor. Okay. So once you have it installed, we would just do and I don't think is it spelled out in here? I don't know. Git config user.name, okay, and then user.email. Those are going to be stored in your user profile so that any Git repo that you work with, it'll know your username and email. And then the other one, I don't ever remember. I always have to come in here and look. The last one is the core.editor. And I always use VS Code. So I just go to this appendix and I search for VS Code. And here's Visual Studio Code. So you'll want to run this command. And I'm going to copy that and paste that in over here. And what this is going to do is it'll set VS Code as the core text editor for Git. If you don't do this, the default is going to be Vim. And then as soon as you make a commit and it opens up your editor, you're going to be Google searching, how do I get out of Vim? Okay, so you just run this git config global core editor code -- wait, and then when you make a commit, it'll open up the commit message here in VS Code.
Can I back you up for a second?
Yeah,
please, because you threw another new word in there, repo. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, a repo is just a folder that is being tracked with Git. That's really all it is. And I can just create one on my desktop. Let me see if I can't find my desktop. Here we go. We'll just make a new folder. We'll call it iChime. All right. And let's open this.
By the way, I have to stop you again. You can't show a picture like that without saying who those two puppies are.
These are my puppies. They're both rescues. The one in the back is Mila, and this is Deanie. And yeah. Those are our puppies.
Living their best life, it looks like.
Yeah, that was fun. That was up at Lost Lake, up by Mount Hood. Okay. So I'm going to open this folder up with VS Code. And now I'm going to open, do a plus so you can see that okay. And I'm going to run a git status command. And that's going to tell me that, no, you can't do it. It's not a Git repository. Okay. And so all I have to do is run git init, and it initialized an empty Git repository in this folder. So now this folder, this iChime folder on my desktop, is a Git repository. So if I do a git status, it's going to tell me that I'm on the master branch. That's just the default branch name that you get with Git. I have no commits. I haven't done anything yet, and there is nothing to commit. Right? There's nothing in this folder. Okay. So if I create a new file, let's pretend we're working on a website. I'm going to create an HTML file. All right, we'll do shift here. Okay, device width here, iChime, and in the body, we'll just do H1, hello, iChime. Okay, so now I have a web page, an HTML page, And if I come back over here, let me clear this out, and I do a git status again, I'm still on the master branch. Okay, we haven't talked about branching yet. I don't have any commits. I haven't committed anything. And Git is telling me I have an untracked file. What this means is that I have a new file in my working directory. The working directory is the actual folder on your laptop or computer, wherever you are. So in my desktop iChime folder, I have a folder, a file, index.html, and it is not being tracked in Git yet. Okay, so what I want to do is, and they actually give you a hint down here, says, hey, use git add to start tracking this file. Okay, so let's do that. Git add index.html. Okay, so now if I run a git status, we can see that I have changes that are not in Git that need to be committed into the Git database, really. So behind the scenes, Git is kind of like a database. It keeps track of all of your files and all of the changes that have happened. Okay. And now I'm going to clear that just to get back up to the top and git status. Okay. So I have a change that's going to be committed. If I run the git commit, I can undo that if I want to. But so let's just git commit, and I'm going to use the -m option here so that I can provide a git message in this commit. Okay, every commit has to have a message. And again, those commits were the things that we were looking at with the VS Code, right? Every change that was made. Okay, initial commit. All right, so now if I run a git status, it's going to tell me that I'm on the master branch and I have nothing to commit. My working tree is clean. So I have nothing to commit. I'm not in the process of working in anything. I don't have anything staged for commit. My working tree is clean. What that means is that all of the files on my computer match exactly what Git is tracking, and all of the contents are the same. Okay, so now if I go back into my index.html and I change something, I put an exclamation point in there. Okay, so something has changed locally on my computer, but it's not in Git yet. And I run a git status. We can now see Git says, oh, hey, something changed. Okay, this is a change to index.html. It has not been staged for commit. And I know you don't like to do the whole PowerPoint thing, and I don't want to do PowerPoint, but I do want to show this image. Okay, because what we have, Git is kind of like a filing cabinet. Okay, that stores all of our changes. Every file and every change that's ever been made is in this filing cabinet in Git. The working directory is what you see, in your actual folder, right? So if I bring up my desktop here and I go in this iChime folder, this is my working directory, okay? And all of the Git stuff is in a hidden folder called .git, okay? So this is my working directory here, okay? In between is what is called a staging area. And so when I want something to go into Git, I have to put it into the staging area or the index first. And that's the git add command. That's going to take the files that I've changed and put them into my outbox, the staging area. And then when I run a git commit, it only puts things from the staging area into the Git repository, the database, and locks them in.
Can I back up again, please?
Yep.
So can you show that folder? You showed the folder where it had the Git, that Git
Yep.
subfolder in there?
I can try to find it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you first created the iChime, it was a completely blank, and then now
completely empty.
Git. So that was added because of the init.
The git init, yes, added the .git, and there's a bunch of stuff in here. There's folders and files and references to head and all kinds of stuff. It's all the internal workings of Git are inside of that .git folder that's in there. And if you want to just stop using Git, like, oh, this Git repo is, it's just completely broken or whatever, you can just right click delete it. I don't know how, I'm new to Windows 11, and so I struggle to find where these things are.
You're not alone.
But you can just right click and delete it, and it's no longer a Git repo. Doesn't hurt anything. Everything Git related is in .git. None of your source is actually in .git. Now, if you do that, you have lost all of the changes that you've made. So you can't go back in history and look and find, a commit from 2 years ago or anything because it was in that .git folder. Right? But when we do this, so if I do a Git status over here, status, okay, it's not a Git repository anymore. So Git init, and there it is. There, it's back.
But now we're starting.
But now we're starting over, right? So
okay.
Let me clear this and Git status. Okay, I'm on the master branch. I don't have any commits, and I have an untracked file, right? Which is exactly where we started last time.
Right.
So if I want to add this, and when I do the Git add, what it's going to do is it's going to move it from my working directory, from my desktop, into a staging area. So we're going to git add index HTML. Okay, we'll run git status. Okay, so now I'm still on the master branch. I have no commits. And if I run the git commit command, this file will be committed from the staging area into the Git database. Okay, so clear this. And I'm going to run git commit without providing the one line commit message. And what that's going to do, you can see that it has opened up a document in my default editor. And again, if you don't change it, it's going to be Vim, and then you have to to insert and WQ and stuff to work with Vim. So change your core editor to VS Code or Nano or whatever it is that you prefer. Maybe you like Vim the best and you don't have to change it, but most folks are going to want to change that to VS Code, and then you're right in here. And the reason you may want to do this is because sometimes your commit message is going to be a lot longer than just one little line. You might want to have a whole lot of background information about why you're making this particular change or something. This is the first commit, just added index.html. And now when we save that and close the file, you can see that Git is now finished with doing that commit. So when you close the file, then Git will finish off the commit. Okay.
So now you can't commit without a message. It's mandatory.
It's mandatory. And you also can't commit without a username and a user email. Okay. So those git config user.name and user.email are going to be required as well. So when you run the git commit, if you don't have those, it's going to ask you to fill those out. So for every single change, it knows the username, the email, and the message.
And have you been in any shops? I mean, it just looks for the presence of text. It's not reading your text necessarily. It's to ensure that what you're putting in there is actually what was changed.
Correct. Yes. For the Git message, for the commit message, you can put the letter A. That it doesn't do any sort of validations on that for you. Now, inside of Git, it knows what files were changed. It knows exactly which lines were changed, so it has all of that information. But as far as the message that you put for a commit, that's totally up to you.
But you're really hurting yourself if you don't put something meaningful in there.
Right. We're going to be relying on peer pressure for good commit messages, right? So if you have somebody who's not doing very good Git commit messages, then you might want to pull them aside and say, look, you put information in there, and usually you're going to have a one-liner, and then background information following that. And we can look at some of those too. Let me pull up the other VS. Did I close? I know I didn't here. So here's the VS Code DB2I, and I'm going to go into the source control and show. So this is what the Git version control looks like in here. Okay, these are all commits that have been made to this particular DB2I project. Okay, and it's every single commit. right? And then these lines are different branches. And we could talk about branches here in a minute, because that's another really great feature of Git. But if you can pull these up and look at the different commit messages, right? So this one is cleanup lock. All right. Some of them are a little bit shorter than others, right? But they all have a message, they all have a user, and they have a timestamp. It keeps track of all of that information for you.
Automatically.
Automatically, yes. Yep.
You're already getting you're already getting a good sense of the power of this tool and how it's far better than just doing a copy member and adding a 9 to the end or appending a 99 or whatever you want to call it.
Right. And the other problem and the other option that we have is this centralized change management. So a lot of times you might have a product where you check out source members. Okay. Right. So you run the checkout command and then you say, oh, so for library pbehr in the iChime, and I want new copy. But what usually happens is that some developer has it locked out for a long running project, and they're not going to be done for 6 months from now. And so you either can't get the checkout, or they have to check it back in, save off their changes so that you can get the checkout and then promote your changes. And then they have to check it back out again and merge their changes back in, right? So that's the centralized version control. There's one central repository where you check things in and out, and that is different than Git and the distributed, because when I check out, you don't actually check out, you clone the entire project, right? So I did a Git clone, and if I needed to work on Git ignore, we wanted to add something to the Git ignore, I don't just check out Git ignore. I clone the entire repository. So I have every file, every change throughout the entire history of the project. And then I can come in here and, let's say we have some iChime stuff that we want to ignore in Git. Okay. I can add that in here. And now when I do a Git status, it'll tell me that I'm on the main branch. It's up to date with the origin, and I have made a change to Git ignore. Okay. So then I would git add this dot git ignore, and then git commit with a message, ignore all iChime files. Okay. Now this change has been made locally on my computer, and it's been committed to the Git repository on my computer. All right. Now, the second half of that would be to push this change up into GitHub, because that's where all of the VS Code, code for I stuff lives. I would push this up into GitHub, and we could, get this change that I made locally into the version that's in GitHub. And we can look at that if you want as well, unless you had some other questions on actual Git itself.
Well, the fact that it's on your local computer suggests that the concept of locked goes away. Nothing is locked.
It is not locked. No. Now you can have conflicts, and that's something that we can show as well with branching and conflicts, or we can delve into GitHub, whichever way you'd rather go.
We can. Well, I don't want to throw you off course. I like the idea of showing a conflict, but you can.
Okay, that's fine. So we have our iChime web page here, and it just says hello from iChime. Kind of boring. We want to maybe go through a couple of different options of trying to make this web page a little bit cuter, okay, more appealing. And so I don't want to make the change directly here. I want to try out a couple of things that might not work out. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use git switch with a -c, and I'm going to create a branch called puppies. Okay. Now what's going to happen is now if I do a git status, you can now see, remember it said I was on branch master. I'm now on branch puppies. Okay. A different set of code really is what it is. Okay. And now what I want is, a paragraph in here that says puppies are cute. And of course, you would want images of puppies and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm going to save this. I think I like this. And now something to note, when you do a branch and switch and make changes to that, let's open this up. So this is desktop iChime. I'm going to open this up in Notepad. It actually says puppies now. Okay. And I'm going to close that out and come back over here. Okay. The other option I might want, I'm going to, let's git switch back to, so let's look at the branches we have. Git branch will list the branches that I'm in the wrong VS Code project. I should just close that out. So I'm going to git branch, and it lists all of the branches that we have. So we have a master branch, we have a puppies branch. Okay. And now I'm going to try to shoot this down. So it says puppies are cute right here. If I git switch back to master, okay, and then git status, okay. Oh, because I didn't add it. So this is what happens if you git switch and if you have uncommitted changes, they follow you around, which I wasn't expecting. So I'm going to git switch back to puppies. Okay. And I want to git add and git commit with a message, add puppies here. Okay. And so now if I git switch back to master, puppies are gone because I didn't make that change in the master branch. I made it in the puppies branch. Okay.
And it's literally a tree. That's how you can think of it, as a tree.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And so now if I git switch, the -C is to create a branch if it doesn't already exist. And I want kittens this time. So I'm going to create and switch to the kittens branch. And in here, because I branched from master, I get the code from master. If I had been in puppies and did a git switch, it would have had the puppies code in there. What I want here in the kittens is kittens, right? Because kittens are very cute, right? And I am going to, let me clear this, git add, git commit with a message, add kittens. Okay, and git switch back to master. What do you think is going to be in index HTML if I switch back to master? That's right, absolutely nothing. I don't have puppies or kittens. Okay, so now I'm on the master branch and I want to bring in the changes from puppies. Okay, I want to merge those changes in. So I git, let's do it, git status.
I have another question for you. Sorry.
Yep.
There's a message to me privately, but I'll just read it out loud anyway. And the message is that you're using all commands. Is there a way to do this graphically?
There is a way to do it graphically. I have found that if I understand the commands, it makes the graphical user interface much easier to understand. And we can look at those in this source control tab in VS Code. VS Code
I didn't mean to throw you, but that was a question that somebody had.
In. Okay. And so you can see I'm on the master branch, and then here's my commit, and any changes that I make are going to show up in here. Okay. But I prefer to understand the commands first. There's a lot of Git Kraken is really an awesome GUI for this. And you can do all of these things in the GUI. What I've discovered is that if you understand the GUI, it's not always easy to go back to the command line, and maybe a little fuzzy on what's going on behind the scenes. So yes, there's a plethora of GUI interfaces for this. Okay.
And all the GUI is doing is under the covers issuing these same
commands. It's running these commands. Exactly right. Yep. Okay. So now I'm on the master branch. I have nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. I want to git merge. We'll put puppies in there. Okay. And now on my master branch, I have puppies, right? So I'm on master branch. And now because I merged in that other branch, it brought those changes from the puppies branch into my master branch. Okay. And so what I can do now is I still have those branches. I can delete. I'm done with the puppies branch. I can delete that if I want to. Okay. Git branch minus D puppies, and it goes away. But what I want to do, I'm still on the master branch. Now I want to git merge kittens. And here we may run into a problem because in kittens, I added a line in the exact same spot, but it says kittens are cute instead of puppies are cute. Okay. And so how is Git going to deal with this? And what should happen? Yep. I have an auto merge conflict. And what that means is in my master branch on this line, it says puppies are cute. In the kittens branch, that same line says kittens, right? And so Git itself is trying to merge these files together, and it doesn't know what I want it to do in this example. Do I want it to say puppies are cute, or do I want it to say kittens? Okay. And so it's asking me right here. It says, I cannot finish doing this merge because these lines conflict. And so it literally puts this text into the file. Here's head. Head is just wherever you're currently at. That's me on my master branch. Okay. It currently says puppies are cute. In the branch I'm trying to merge in, it's that same exact line says kittens. I can't merge these. So please, you fix this. Okay. And
you developer.
Manually, yes, you developer, look at this conflict and make the decision as to what should be in on that particular line. Okay. So
two more questions. I'm sorry, but they're starting to come in now.
Yep.
Another question I have two questions here. Right now I have three questions. The first one is that you have multiple versions. Where are all these versions being stored?
They're stored inside of that .git folder in the Git database.
On your laptop?
Well, wherever the repository is, right? So this one is currently on my laptop. All of those changes are going to be inside of this Git folder here, right? Everything is inside of this .git. Now, where it is inside of .git, I don't know. I haven't delved into the plumbing, right? But it's inside of .git. Now, if you're looking in GitHub, then all of the changes are in the .git folder in GitHub or your laptop or wherever, and they can be different, right? The changes and versions that I have in my .git folder, okay, in my repository, if I'm making changes, they're by default going to be different than the changes that we have in GitHub. And then what you want to do is eventually merge them together into one version of your master or main branch or production branch, whatever it is you wanted to call it.
Right. I just want to point out that one of the questions was, and you've just answered it now, is an external repo like GitHub required? And then Richard responded right to the question and his answer, which is correct. No, you can keep your repositories local in the IFS or on your PC, as you're doing right here, as you're demonstrating, or hosted via GitHub, GitLab, etc. Those are all
right
lab repositories, if you will.
The collaboration is the key, right? There's no way that I would be able to have other people work on this particular repo because it's on my desktop, right? So if I wanted to make it available to other people to help out, I would put this up on GitHub or Bitbucket or some other hosting service where other people can collaborate and work on it.
So what you're doing right here is more just for demonstration purposes. You really wouldn't keep a repo on your laptop.
Well, if I was writing a novel, I might just have it on my desktop. I tend to put them in GitHub just in case that it makes it available anywhere I go. If my computer dies, I have a copy in GitHub. I can just clone it back down. It's no big deal.
Sure.
Right? So almost everything that I do is in a GitHub repo. Yep. But you don't. Right. It's not a requirement.
Understood. One more question. It's saying the .git folder is in the same folder as index.html.
That is correct.
Right. Well, that's the setup. Now the question is, does this potentially make available if the folder is available through a web server? Is this a kind of security issue?
Yeah. a security issue that if you're putting that, yeah, normally you wouldn't have your .git folder in your htdocs in your web server.
Okay. Another question, which I think is beyond scope of this conversation right now, is how do you, or where are you tracking, for example, IBMi source files? Because you're showing HTML, this wouldn't be RPG, but and do you deploy with Bob or something? But I think that's well beyond what we're trying to talk. We're going over the foundationals in this today's.
Right. Yeah. So in this particular session, we really just wanted to hammer home, right, the git add, git commit, and editing and branching and merging. As far as RPG source, it doesn't matter. If you put it in the IFS and you have git, it works exactly the same as what you're seeing here. Git has no idea that it doesn't care that it's an HTML file or an SQL file or an RPG file. Doesn't care. It's just a file, and it just tracks the data inside of the file. Okay, so that would be the only difference, is that your RPG source would be in the IFS.
If you can make us feel better, maybe put a couple comments in there that have declare F or something, just so we can
right. Star free, right?
Or a select star from or something.
Star free. Okay. So now it's RPG source. Okay. And declare S.
There we go.
HTML. Varchar, right, whatever, 32,000. Okay. HTML equals quote there plus, and it puts pluses in. It really doesn't matter. It's just a file. It's just tracking the bits and bytes behind the scenes, right?
Right. So again, for this discussion, we shouldn't necessarily care that it's HTML. Who cares? It's just we should look at it. It could be easily declare statements and whatever procedures and anything.
Yeah. The only gotcha is that Git doesn't understand. Well, so there's two gotchas. Okay. First is that Git doesn't understand source physical files and members. Okay. So your source, you got to move that into the IFS. And the second thing is that Git is only version control and does not deal with compiling objects or deploying things from one server to another or different environments. Okay. That is where Bob, Make, Git, Jenkins, those other tools come into play. Is, Git is just the change management. All of the other stuff is handled by some other thing.
And we can certainly have, if we didn't want to have GitHub, the actual GitHub, because of privacy concerns or corporate policies, we can certainly have a version of GitHub locally in our company. I think it's the enterprise version. I think it's how you do that.
I haven't looked at that. I know that there are options. GitHub Enterprise subscriptions. You can run GitLab locally, so there are options. GitHub. I have a lot of private repos in GitHub, so you can set them to public or private. And so I have my stuff up in GitHub. Don't put credentials in GitHub, whether it's private or not. That's just a really bad idea. So be careful of what you put into your version control, right? And so let me just finish up this conflict, because I want to say puppies and kittens are cute. Okay, I don't want one or the other. I'm going to just use both of them. I'm going to save that and pull this back up. Get status here. So now I have an unmerged path. Okay, I want to git add index HTML git commit -m, make the page cute with puppies and kittens. Okay, and if you accidentally make a misspelling in your git commit message, you can use git commit amend and change them, or you forget a file. So that would be another opportunity to go back over here and look in the documentation for the git commit with the amend option in there. Yep.
So you just resolved that conflict.
I have resolved the conflict. Yes.
And just to repeat again, if you don't mind, because the messages now are coming fast and furious in the chat.
Okay.
So just repeat, please, what the original conflict was and what created the conflict.
Okay. So I had puppies Okay, so what I had here is my first commit, right? I just created index HTML. Okay, then I added puppies. So I didn't have anything on this line, and then I added puppies, which became line 11. Okay, then I tried to add kittens. Kittens is also on line 11. So I have two different versions of line 11 in index HTML. And so Git was not able to automatically merge those two changes together. So it asked me, okay, this is what you have in index HTML in your master branch. This is what you're trying to merge in. It's a conflict. So here you go. You fix it and let me know when you're done. Okay. And so then I went in and edited the file, and I just said puppies and kittens are cute, and then I committed that change. Okay, and this is the graphical representation of all of those different changes and every single change that happened. So on my first commit was made by me 22 minutes ago. All right, and there's the message: this is my first commit. There was nothing there, and then there was something there. I added puppies, and then I added kittens on my kittens branch, and then I merged those together. And now what we have is puppies and kittens are cute.
So in a real world environment, let's say this was indeed RPG, not that it matters again, but it was RPG. This would be tantamount to two developers, for example, pulling down the same program and each making their own set of changes to the same program.
Either multiple developers working on their own branches for their own things that they're working on, or maybe one developer, right? If you have that 7-month project, right, you don't want to check things out and everything's locked for 7 months. You can't make any other changes. So you would create a branch for this is my long running 7-month long project, and you start making your changes in there. And then if a bug report comes in, like, oh, the website's down or this RPG program is crashing, you can go back to your master branch, okay, or main branch, make a branch from there that's a bug fix for, error reported on this day. Make the bug fix in a separate branch and merge that branch in to your master branch. Then your long running project branch is still over off on the side and unaffected by anything. What you'll need to merge all of those changes back together, but that is another use for those separate branches.
And certainly Git would help you when you have this conflict. It will help you identify the changes and help you merge them in.
Yes, it'll show you everything that's different, and it'll automatically merge things where there aren't conflicts, and it'll show you where there are conflicts. Now, what it's not going to do, you're talking about RPG code, right? You can declare, make some line in there that refers to a variable that doesn't exist. Git's going to put that in there. It's not doing syntax checking or anything along those lines. Okay. So if you merge two different branches in and there's RPG errors in there, Git isn't going to help you with that, right? So you want to make sure that you do all of your testing and everything else. Now, if you do have two separate developers that are working on this separately, and somebody has cloned the repo, all right, two developers clone the repo, they're working on separate things. Developer A commits their changes and pushes them back up to GitHub. Okay. Before developer V is going to be able to push his changes, he has to merge in the changes from the other developer first, run through changes, and then they can push their changes up to the main repository.
And that's because developer B will get a conflict when he tries to promote.
It won't even let you. So if you're dealing with like something in GitHub or some master repository that you have, okay, you're going to clone from there and you're going to work locally. When you're going to try to push those changes in, okay, it's going to check, okay, oh, sorry, you can't do that because you're 3 commits behind. You have to pull in those changes and merge the new stuff in with what the code looked like when you checked it out, right? Because you may have checked it out 3 months ago and there's 9 more commits in the master repo that you don't have. So it'll force you to pull those changes down, run your testing, make sure that your code still works, and then you can push it back up.
I want to make a quick. I have a couple now. Okay, because I'm getting more and more things in the chat, but I just want to show you how superior this is compared to a source physical file, because we have relied on for many, many years just the single line date, the date, the change date.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't, and there's no notion of that with this at all.
No.
This is not adding a 6-character field or a six numeric field at the end of each record. That doesn't exist.
Nope. But
And
what
yet it is tracking individual changes.
it does, and there's tools too, right? So you can look at Git Lens. Okay, this is an extension for VS Code, and let me enable this. I leave it disabled most of the time because it does pop up a lot of information. But let me get out of this, and in here, hopefully I don't have to re-enable any of my stuff. Let me close all this stuff. I move this sharing box out of the way. There we go. Okay, so index HTML. So let me open this back up, right? This tells me that when I mouse over, this is telling me that I added this line. It may be a little bit hard to see through the.
It's vague. It's vague.
29 minutes ago, this is the first commit. Just added index HTML. So that's the timestamp, the user who made the commit, and the commit message on every single line. Okay, so this one was 7 minutes ago. So, wow, where did this line come from? So remember result 2, what changed? Well, I would be able to mouse over on that. It would tell me exactly who changed it, when they changed it, and the commit message. I changed the name of result to result 2 because of something, something. A lot better than a source date that you can accidentally change or set to 0.
Some more questions? Patrick?
I have time for more questions.
Okay.
You asked me for, yeah, let's go.
I was asking. So I want to back up because they're coming fast and furious. So when you first did your commit, and I guess when you added the kittens into puppies, what happened to the kittens branch? Does it still exist?
It's still there. Oh yeah, they're both there. Okay, and so because I didn't delete them. So if I look at Git branch. Okay, all 3 branches are still there. Okay, this is highlighting master because I'm on the master branch. Okay, but again, watch the code up here. If I git switch over to kittens, this is the source code that I have in the kittens branch.
So that is a perfect segue into the next question. The question was, can you show how to get back to the puppies without kittens?
Yes. So git switch puppies. Now I have puppies. Now this is my puppies branch. Okay. Now if I wanted to look at things in my master branch, you can also. So yeah, let's look at that. Git status. Where am I? I'm on puppies. So let's go back, switch to the master branch. Okay. The other cool thing that hasn't been brought up yet is git log. Okay. Git log is going to show me a log of every single change that was made. So this is a commit that I made on the master branch. Okay, I made the page cute with puppies and kittens. The commit before that was on the kittens branch. I added kittens. Then I had puppies. I added puppies. Here, what did I do here? This is a merge. Okay, there's my puppies and kittens. I did that on the master branch. Here's add kittens to kittens, add puppies to puppies. So git log is going to show you every commit that you've made. Okay. And so you can use this commit message here. Let me get out of there with a Q. Okay. You can actually travel back in time with, I think it's a git checkout. And then you put that in there. Okay. And now I have traveled back in time. Okay. In my master branch to when I only had hello iChime in there.
Would you consider the master branch a production branch, and the other two were like dev?
Yeah, there's different workflows that you can go through. And something else to point out, there's absolutely nothing special about the master branch. It's just a branch with the name of master, and it happens to be the default you get with Git itself. If you create a repo on GitHub, you're going to end up with the main branch, not master branch. You can make a branch called production, and that's your production source. It's just a branch, and all branches are created equal. So there's nothing special about master, except that in this example, I'm using that actually as the master production version of the source. Yes.
I can tell you, you're definitely generating a lot of interest in this because there are several questions now in the chat, and they're all saying similar things. And what they're really talking about now is how do I do this in an IBMi environment? Specifically, how do I get current source physical files into the IFS? First of all, is there
Okay.
a tool that you know that will automate that process? And 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 how to start using this in IBMi specifically? I think that you've kind of answered that. It works the same. It doesn't matter that it's RPG and the IFS. It would just be another path, the IFS.
Right. Git itself is not any different on IBMi. Okay. The only thing that's different is that we currently have our source in these source physical file members. Okay. Liam has created a project, and as part of that, and I don't remember which one it is, a Project Explorer or one of the plethora of open source that he's created. There's a the heck is it called? A migrate command, and you can run migrate, and it'll move your source physical file members into the IFS for you. There is a great what is it called? It's in GitHub, and I think I actually have one. Find repo RPG Git book. Okay, so there is an RPG Git book project in GitHub, and mine is just a fork of Liam's, but it's pretty much the same stuff. I can put that if I can find the chat button. There we go. I'll put that in here and try to send to everybody. So there's my copy, my fork in GitHub of the RPG Git book. So there's a lot of information in here on stuff. And like I said, there's one of his projects that he did, and there's a migrate command. So just Google search around. Liam has done a tremendous amount of work in making this as easy as possible. As far as promoting things and compiling things, there's VS Code actions, there's Bob, there's make, there's all kinds of things that are available for another Git iChime session.
But the point is, so the Git is the control, but almost like Bob and other tools are going to now take it and actually do the compiling for us, because we haven't talked about compiling at all.
Correct.
And that's what the deployment portion, and the next thing would be the deployment.
Correct. And Bob is one of the options. In Code for I, there's actions, and you can have it upload into your source into the IFS and compile it for you. Lots and lots of stuff. That's a whole other session that you have lined up. Bob, your uncle, right? So that's one of the options that you have.
Yeah, and now we're talking about dependencies, meaning if you make a change to
Yes.
a table, it's going to compile that before it compiles the RPG,
Right.
and so on and so forth.
Yep. And for that sort of stuff, again, there is not Copilot up here.
But that's beyond scope of this, because we need to understand it. Before you even use a tool like Bob or anything else, you need to understand the plumbing.
Right, and that's really all we were wanting to cover today. Source Orbit is another open source project that Liam has, and that is one that will help you find dependencies between RPG programs and stuff. But for this particular session, I really wanted to just talk about how to install Git. What is it? Why is it like so much better than not having it or using change dates in your source physical file members, and then kind of go through the git add, git commit cycle and looking at the status and maybe merging in a couple of branches. So that's the basic. Really, most of your day as a developer is going to be, let me make a change, right? Some change, and save that, and then go in and git add that and git commit that. And then push your changes up at the end of the day or whenever you're done with a group of changes.
Another question for you, and that
Yep.
I'm getting from somebody, and it's saying this is a department change. You can't have half Git and not half Git. Is that true? You need to have once you decide to take this leap, you need to be under full Git control with the whole team. You shouldn't have somebody modifying program XYZ and under Git and another person doing it outside of Git.
But it's no different than, some of the other options that we have, right? You don't want people logging on to production and then just going and changing the production code on, willy-nilly on their own outside of your change management software, right? It leads to problems and confusion, and can really be a nightmare. So you would want everybody to get on board and use it, and it's really not that difficult, and the benefits are just unbelievable, right? In being able to look back and see everything that's changed, and oh my gosh, I put in a change into production and it was working yesterday and it's broken today. Where's the old source? Well, if you're not using version control, you don't have the old source and you have to kind of start from scratch. If you have Git, you can just check out the version from last time and put that back into production. It makes it very easy.
You can roll back.
Yes. Well, roll forward really is kind of
that's true, right?
What they do, right? You would check out, get the last version of it and put that back in.
I just want to say that there's a lot of terminology that you've been throwing at us, which you had to do because that's a little part and parcel of using Git. But my own personal experience is that it might seem like a lot, but I promise you that if you spend a little bit of time, and I mean a little bit of time, it becomes second nature to you. This is not hard, and it's worth your time to learn how to use this because the benefits that you get from a department, from an auditing standpoint, and just being able to manage source and seeing changes, the visibility that you get is far better than putting lines of code on the top of the program, as you said earlier, ABC, and hopefully the program had tagged every single line or relied on the dates and then someone zeroed them out. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and it's easy enough to do on your laptop. You don't have to be on the IBMi. You can just, go to Git for Windows, install it, create a folder on your desktop, open up, hopefully you're using VS Code, but you don't have to. You would need a terminal in order to run these Git commands, or a GUI. I don't use the GUI, so I can't help you with that too much. But then you just make some commits, make some branches, play around with it. If you break something, delete the git.git folder and start over. It's kind of fun.
There is another message in the chat that I'm going to address unless you. And how does it work with RDI? Do you have any idea? I can address it if you're not sure.
I haven't used RDI in. Oh yeah, I'm not capable of answering that one properly.
I can tell you my experience with that. To answer that question is that I would recommend you look at a third-party tool, and there are plenty of them out there to help integrate Git into RDI. It's not going to be as clean without a third-party tool, but it works quite well, but you need to have a third-party tool. I'll leave it there.
My understanding is that a lot of the change management products on IBMi are all incorporating Git in some form or fashion. So it's not something you're going to be able to avoid for much longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately source going to the IFS is just going to be a natural thing going forward.
Absolutely.
So, Patrick, let's just get some more questions. I know, so you showed us, by the way, you did show us the history and you showed us that cute little graph. That comes with Git, that little graph.
No, that is in VS Code. It uses and that was the other project has a lot of history to it. That is something that VS Code or Git Kraken or some other GUI can read all of the Git information and present it to you in a beautiful timeline sort of fashion. So it's using the data that's stored in Git, but
Right.
the actual representation of it is whatever GUI product that you're using, right? So in VS Code, GitHub is owned by Microsoft. VS Code is coming from Microsoft, and so they're tied at the hip, same company. It's baked into VS Code, and so it makes it very easy. And if you didn't like using the commands right here in the change source control tab in VS Code, it'll show you all of your changes. You can sync your changes and git add, git commit. It's all available right here in the source control activity bar here. Yep.
My experience with using a graphical tool versus the command has been the graphical tools are good and they do a good enough job, but like many things, even on IBMi, there are sometimes more parameters that the graphical tools don't let you
Right.
use, and you just have more control over the command line, using the command line, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've gotten used to it, and it's actually pretty quick and easy to just use the command line. If you're trying to visualize, a whole bunch of different branches and merges and that sort of information, I would prefer a GUI. And then also when I'm looking at the diffs, what has changed in the file, right? We have the nice graphical colors and all of that, which I kind of like. It's a lot better than the compare PFM, right?
And anotother question I got here, and I guess it's maybe it was obvious we kind of bypassed it, but what's the relationship between Git and GitHub? Because people seem to use them in the same sentence, and maybe they just use them interchangeably incorrectly.
Right. So Git is what we've been looking at. It is the software that is doing the version control on my computer here for our iChime repo that we created. GitHub is an online tool for GitHub repositories to allow collaboration. Right, because again, nobody else can work on my iChime repo because it's on my desktop. If I want other people to have access to it or to be able to add to the development, I have to have that somewhere where other people can get to it. And GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, all of those different places where you can store GitHub repos where other people can share them and work collaboratively on the software. Right. That's what GitHub is.
And you did mention a term also before, and I think you put a link in there, but you just give a 1 minute definition. You mentioned the word fork.
Yes,
You forked something. What does that mean?
I did. So I went into GitHub, right? So I'm on GitHub here, and let's actually search for. Right.
And why would you want to fork something? Fork being a verb in this case.
Yes. So here is a Central Park Data Systems repository, CPDS, right? And if I happen to see something in here, it needed more information, or I wanted to work on this for some reason, well, this isn't my repo. It's a public repo, but I can't just willy-nilly add anything in there that I want. So the first thing that I would need to do, or maybe I don't want to contribute to it, I want to make my own copy of it and go off in a different direction, right? So what I would do is fork this repo. Again, what we're looking at is GitHub. So it's an online Git repository. Okay. And I can fork this and put this into my account, okay, under CPDS, and I'm going to create a fork. Okay, so now I have so now this is the same repository, the same files, the same history, but it's in my account. You can't see me pointing. Move my cursor. My picture there instead of your picture or somebody else's picture. So now this is in my GitHub repo. And then what I would do is clone this down locally. So I would grab this here and come into VS Code. Let's just do it. Let me close the folder. And this is pretty cool too. In VS Code, if I want to work on a repo, I just hit the clone repo button in here, clone from GitHub, and I put that in there. Right, save that. And it's going to ask me, where do you want to save this? I'll put this in my projects folder here, select that. Okay, it's cloned, open. I am now looking at that source on my desktop. It's in my projects folder on my desktop. Okay, and then is awesome. I put some change in there, whatever it is I want, or put a logo or anything. Okay, and I do a git status. I'm on the master branch. I'm up to date with Origin. Origin is my repo in GitHub. Okay, I want to git add everything, git commit -m. C parent data systems is awesome. Okay. All right. And so now I've changed the repo locally on my laptop. I would git push to Origin. Origin is my GitHub repo and the master branch. Hopefully this works okay. Yep. And now if I go back to GitHub, okay, here, let me just refresh the page here. Now it says Central Park Data Systems is awesome in my repo. Okay. And now this is that was mostly Git that I was dealing with, Git clone and Git add, Git commit. Here is where the collaboration comes in. Okay. I can contribute this back to the upstream repository, which is your repo. CPD is awesome, and you should let everyone know. Okay. And then I can add a description in here, whatever I want to, and I can create a pull request for that. And that pull request is something that happens in GitHub. It's going to show up on your GitHub, Charlie, and say, hey, Behr has made a pull request, and you can take a look at it and say, oh yeah, that's an awesome change. Let me merge that in. Or you can say, well, everybody already knows that I'm awesome and I don't have to put it into the website, and you can just throw that change away and ignore it. Okay. But that GitHub is for the collaboration and doing pull requests and that sort of stuff, but it uses Git under the covers.
That is an odd term, and one that it did when I was first learning it did trip me up, because you're creating a pull request, but you're requesting for this to be pulled by the owner.
Correct. Yes.
Because in my mind, it was a push request, but it's really
right. So I pushed the changes to my repo in GitHub, and then I'm not allowed to push my changes to your repo. What I have to do is request for you to pull those changes in. It's a permissions difference.
And then when you look at, so let's go back to VS Code, for example. When I go to the main VS Code, code for ICE, I see contributors on there.
Yep.
So now you would be a contributor on this site. What does a contributor mean in that context?
It means that you contributed something to this particular project. And if we look here in this CPDS,
and that they accepted your pull request.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that it means, is that you made some sort of a change, committed it into a branch, made a pull request, and in your pull request was accepted, and your code changes were incorporated into whatever project it is you're working on.
In quote unquote production.
In production, yes. Yep.
Does anybody have any other questions? I got to tell you, this is you've covered so much in this 1 hour, but really great.
I think we need a part 2 at some point, maybe.
I think so. And then, of course, people are asking also, when can we do an iChime one? Actually, one that does promotions, deployments. I think this is an interesting topic. This is an interesting topic, and it's certainly very timely as we start getting into much more modernization, things like that. Somebody had the pull push explanation was spot on. There you go,
Oh,
Patrick.
thank
Well
you.
done. Perfect. Anybody else have any other questions? I mean, I know there's a lot of information going on here. Um, this is good. Looking forward to seeing your upcoming ocean, Patrick. There you
Oh,
go.
thank you, Margaret.
Patrick's going to be giving a session, a real session on, was it on a Saturday, I think, next later this month?
Saturday, yes, February 22nd, Ocean is having an in-person all-day workshop. We're going to be doing APIs with Python and PHP,
Wow,
sponsored by Sidon Group and Cloud First.
cool. In in Orange
Oh,
County?
in Orange County, yeah, it's at Vanguard University in Costa Mesa. Yep.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. That's really good. So I'm just going through my list of questions to make sure you've answered everything in some way. Um, does Git work with RPG and IFS? Yes, of course it does. That's what we were talking about. Oh, we didn't talk about the Git tags.
Okay. Yep. So what we did, and we looked at and I think I've closed everything down, but we were looking at those the Git log, and it showed all of the commits that were in there with the commit hashes. What you can do is at a particular commit, you can apply a tag and say, okay, I have all of the things that I wanted for version 0.1, and you can tag a commit as version 0.1. And then you make a bunch more commits, commit. Okay, I have accomplished everything that I wanted for version 1.0, and you can git tag a commit as version 1, and then it makes it easier for people to find that commit because those hashes are just jumbled letters and whatnot, right?
In a typical shop, who would be responsible for managing the pull requests and actually putting them onto the master?
It would depend on your shop. Right, mostly. Sometimes you have a master repo, and just like in the GitHub example, right, I can make a pull request, and Charlie, you're the one that's authorized to pull those changes in, right? So that it might be your senior developer or something like that, right? So all of the worker bees are able to make commits and then make pull requests, and then you have your a committee or whatever pull those changes in. Right? It may be that everybody has access to the master branch, and you can just make those commits. Right?
Or I might limit that, and I may have a senior team only have access to, let's say, a QA brand.
Right? And another thing that you can do with these pull requests here is actually have code reviews and whatnot in here. Right. So if you didn't like my change here in this pull request, Charlie can add a message. Well, you only added one exclamation point. I'm so awesome. I need 3 exclamation points. Or, maybe no exclamation points are needed. Just leave a period at the end. You can write those comments in here, and we can work through this pull request as kind of a code review process.
And I could reject your pull request too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can just close it, done. I don't want that. It's ridiculous. And I probably would do that if I were you, because we were just playing around for iChime. So yeah, feel free to do what you like with that pull request. If you like it, merge it in. If you don't like it, leave me a message that says yeah thanks but no thanks, and close it.
Right, but I would only see that by me logging into my own GitHub account.
Right.
I would
Yes.
see a pull request is pending.
Yes. Yeah. And if you never log in again, that pull request is just going to sit out there and be pending forever.
Right.
Yep. But now, if you did that, and I was really interested in this project, okay, what I can do, I have a fork of it. It's open source. I have a fork of it. Charlie's not responding to my pull requests with this awesome code that I'm putting in there. I can just move forward with my own fork of that project. And you'll hear about this like with Bitcoin and some of these other open source projects. Hey, I don't like what folks are having. I'm going to make a fork of that and go off in a different direction with that open source project. Right. So I can fork your project and do what I want with it.
What do you have out there? What do you see from a best practices point of view as far as creating a workflow? Or is there any kind of template that people normally have for a workflow, or is literally each
Yes.
shop different?
There are documented workflows that work pretty well. And I don't remember exactly where they are, somewhere in this Git Pro book, probably. There are like feature request branches is a specific workflow. And that's kind of what we were looking at with kittens and puppies. If you have a bug or, some sort of new thing you want to introduce, you create a branch for that feature, work on it, and then merge that back in. Git branching workflows right here in the Git book. Okay. So you just have different ways of doing topic branches, master branches, stuff like that. A quick Google search on Git workflows will describe the different options that folks have found that work fairly well. And it's all going to have to do with Git add, Git commit, Git branch, Git merge.
What's your recommendation to shops who are considering doing this as far as getting started? What would be like if we had a meet, if we're not doing this today, we're doing all source physical files and all manual copies and yada yada yada. And what would be our very first step other than just playing with some test documents like this just to get understanding the plumbing?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be my first step? What would be my very first step here to go into this?
I think that would be a great first step. What I like to do, even if we don't have Git on the IBMi or the whatever I'm working on is not in a Git repo, I will copy that source, download it to a folder locally, and start Git on it. And I work in Git locally. And then when I'm happy with it, I can move the source back up to the IFS and copy it into source members, whatever I need to do. So I've just been kind of doing it locally myself, even if I don't have Git controlling the source on the IBMi. And it saved my bacon a couple of times.
Yeah. And the workflow running this on IBMi would be it would just be a workflow specific to IBMi as far as where you I guess the difference would be that you'd have to add a compile in there also when you go to deploy.
Right. And that's where you would want to look into. And I think that there are walkthroughs for that, working with the IBMi actions and the make, and Liam has videos and open source projects, and there's Bob, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. A lot of time, I mean, right in VS Code and Code for IBMi, you can deploy your local source to the IFS. And so that's what I usually use. I have my source on a folder on my laptop, and I can make my changes, deploy it to the IFS, compile it. And if it works and I like it, I can move it wherever it is I need to move it.
The good news, I think, is that we talk about different technologies from platforms, things like that, and there's a lot of different mumbo jumbo on all different platforms. But this is one thing, kind of like SQL, I suppose, that it's really ubiquitous and this very, very the same, if not identical, across platforms. So once you know it, you know it.
Well, absolutely, yes. And Git is really the de facto version control software for pretty much the entire world. Right. Everybody else is using Git these days. And there's a couple of other options out there, but my guess would be 90+% of projects are using Git.
I agree. And it's only because of what it's so powerful and what it can do. And it really does do a phenomenal job.
It only does version control, but it does it really, really well. Yep.
Agreed. Absolutely. And we didn't even, and not that you have to demonstrate it or even open it up, but just if you just talk briefly, if you can, about Git blame, because that's an old.
Yeah. So again, if you happen to notice a bug in production, you want to try to track it down and figure out, okay, where is this bug coming from? And with this tool with Git, you have every single commit, and you can check out previous commits and run the source, and it will help you narrow down exactly which commit introduced the bug. Right. So, you can say, hey, I know it worked on this date and now it's not working. Help me figure out, who changed this file to make it not work anymore. And it'll just, you can walk through the different commits and, okay, no, it's still working. It's still working. Oh, now it's not working. So somewhere in between this commit and that commit, this change caused that bug to happen. And you can narrow it down to Frankie installed this particular commit with this file and this exact change on this day with this commit message, and it caused some sort of an error. Yep.
I'm not sure I like the word blame, but that's the word that they use.
it is what it is, right? There's a
Exactly.
bug, and you are finding out exactly. We're blaming a particular commit, not a person. Maybe that makes it a little more palatable.
There you go. There you go. And I would also, I mean, I'm going to add my own, inject my own little uh, thing. I have found that even when I was using the command line and learning it, I did alternate between the command line and the graphical tool to get a flavor for it. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some things that I did just naturally go to the graphical one. But again, when you want to go down on a granular level and use a particular parameter, again, the graphical tools don't always, but it does, but they are nice and they're pretty and they give you nice
Yep.
charts and everything. So there is a place for them to be sure.
Well, and the other thing is that the command line is always going to be the same no matter what. If you go from one graphical tool to another, it might operate a little bit different. There'll be a little bit of a learning curve for that. But at the end of the day, it's running the commands um, and showing you the commit information.
Agreed. Patrick, you did it.
Whew. Wow.
Round of applause for
Yes,
Patrick.
thank you, Charlie. That was awesome.
That really was awesome. That was amazing, actually. So glad you introduced us to the concepts of Git. And I would really recommend everybody go out there. GitHub you can create your own an account for free in GitHub.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yep.
So I would recommend you to do that also. Make it private, or is that only for paid?
Well, your account is just your account, and then each of your repositories that you create in GitHub, you can identify those as private or public, right? And so, obviously, if you want other people to help work on it, or you want to, brag about how awesome your stuff is, you want to make those public. If it's something private, and then obviously make it private. And in either case, don't put sensitive information into a Git repository. Okay, no passwords, no social security numbers, bank account numbers. Don't put those in a Git repo and put them up into GitHub, because then it's in the internet and it's forever, and people can clone it, and just bad stuff. So be careful with what you put in there, even with your private repos. But I've not had any problems with GitHub.
Yeah. You should know that the chat is getting flooded with all great things. Thank you. Great presentation. Good job. Looking forward to the next session on this topic. This was a great starting point. PowerPoints just don't clarify it this way. There you go. That's a good comment. But they go on and on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming. I'm looking forward to the next topic too.
There you go. So Patrick, this has been great. Best of luck in your workshop on Saturday and in a couple of weeks in Orange County. Also, one of my favorite places to visit. So that's all good. Thank you very much for your time today, for your knowledge sharing, and also I'll just repeat it. I said in the beginning, if you're not linked in to Patrick, you may certainly want to consider that, because he does have a lot of great little videos now on how to use VS Code for IBMi.
Yeah, and there was just one that I put out on how to use Git to compare source members on different partitions. So check that out on LinkedIn.